Plants. The Green Frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. What's up, everybody? This is Blaine from the Horticult. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. We're talking about living fences. This has to do with the idea of taking cuttings, building a thin hedge with them. No rooting hormone required. We talk about the kind of varieties that will be able to pull this thing off for you. A little bit of maintenance involved and how to do it and when to start. Now is the time to do it when it's nice and cool in the spring before the shrubs and things leaf out. Get your clippers out there, cut some things. Let's get it on. This is Blaine.
And this is B-Rad.
We are the Horticult, and today, living fences.
Yeah, so living fences, that's kind of a cool topic. Just came to mind, and I have a little bit of experience with that, but I just wanted to throw out there what I know about it, and here we go. The plant material that works best, anybody out there could guess, bamboo, right? Grows like a weed, and it can make an excellent kind of a fence line or windbreak or whatever.
You know, I've actually heard, I don't know exactly what variety they were talking about, but I've actually heard that if not done correctly, it can become out of control.
Mucho problemas.
That.
So, yes, yeah.
So if you do use bamboo, precaution, use it wisely. But yes, super thick. That's how they use it in its native areas. Like, it's just so thick, it's like a wall.
Yeah. Use caution with bamboo, but that would be a great one to do. So we're talking about living fences. So what kind of cuttings? Fence. Yeah, what kind of cuttings can we take off of existing tree and shrub plant material that we can create this fence? Well, bamboo is a good one. Willow is another great variety that will root quickly and easily without a lot of headache as far as like rooting hormone. Mm-hmm. Cottonwood, that's kind of a crazy thing. It's a giant tree, but you can always kind of prune it down and keep it hedged down to the height you want. Poplar, now those guys are in the same family, poplar and cottonwood, right? Both root very, very easily via cutting. Kind of weak, poor, kind of weak structurally. Anyway, let's see. Moving forward, dogwood. So the Cornus genus, I like your red twig dogwood is a great one that roots quickly. Shrub material, your dogwoods, mock orange, viburnum, privets. Those all are good candidates for this project. So those are the varieties that if anybody's familiar with those out there, then yeah, that's a good first start to this whole project. Just a few details that go along with that. To be successful, take 3 to 4 foot cuttings. Now, in some instances, you can't really do that. But if you're taking out a bunch of like a thicket of these things, or your neighbor is, or somebody is taking these out, you can always create a fence line. Anyway, 3 to 4 foot cuttings. You soak the cuttings in water for about 6 hours. Spring is the ideal time to take these cuttings, just when the buds are just starting to swell and the plant is wanting to flush out. Once you have your cuttings, they're soaking. There's a couple of ways you can fasten these or attach these in a kind of more of a linear fashion. 2 posts kind of acting as a cradle every so often, every couple of feet. That way you can put your cuttings as you jam those down into the ground, and it'll follow that cradle or that border area that you're wanting to do.
This is a lot like a hedgerow, like a fence, but you're using basically propagating a fence with cuttings.
Yeah.
The ones that you listed were just the ones that could do it by cuttings, or would you say you could buy those in pots that are already done?
You could do both. Yeah, you could do both, and bare root actually is a really great way to do it. But if you wanted to reduce your cost even more, and you're like, oh man, my budget's this, that's either buy 3 plants or simply just find the specimen, take the cuttings. Your success rate, just simply by jamming them down in the ground, the cut part down in the ground, you're going to get 85, 90% success rate. So there's a few,
That's pretty good.
Few of the sprigs that just won't take. And spring is always, again, obviously, spring is a great time to take those cuttings because you have that cooler weather. You have the rains that come in intermittently throughout the week, which helps, keep things turgid and watered in. Another way you could kind of manipulate that fence line or hedgerow would simply be using rope or jute, hemp, some type of fastening material to then just kind of rope it around each one from one to the next to the next. The idea is to have a cutting probably about every 2 inches apart. So right off the bat, you're getting kind of this nice tight fence line.
Oh, wow. So a lot thinner than what I'm thinking as in a hedge.
It's way thinner, and that's why I mentioned that cradle system. But another great way, so if you're kind of trying to finish off your project, you want to make sure that the ground that you're working with is freshly tilled, whether it's hand tilled or machine. That way you can shove the cuttings and these sticks down in about 3 to 4 inches deep. So your ground has to be quite friable, right, in order to get that down.
So they're not already rooting at all. They're
Not
just
at all.
soaked.
That's right. They're soaked, and you're not even putting rooting hormone on them. It's just these varieties just simply propagate so easily under the right conditions. And so if you're taking advantage of timing and everything like that, then wow, you can go a long ways without actually having to go purchase one of those from the store.
So how long are you looking at for maturity, though, and how long for it to root in and start, leafing out?
Yeah, it'll start leafing out right away. As long as it stays turgid and it stays moist, that little sapling can uptake water into its xylem. It will root out from nodes that are under the soil. So those auxiliary nodes, it'll root out from those points. I'd say you'd have a pretty decent fence line in 6 to 8 weeks. You will see callousing and rootlets starting out, and then in 1 year's time, it's locked in. It will have been rooted in nicely. So yeah, just make sure you keep it well watered. Meaning it's just different for everybody, but I would say twice a week. Get out there with your irrigation system and or a hose. Mulch it right around the base of all of those. So you've not only pressed it down in the soil 3 or 4 inches, but then you're going to mulch it with some kind of a compost or bark material, creating kind of a hedge or a mound, I guess. And that will also help protect the moisture and help it root in a little bit quicker. So kind of a different and interesting way horticulturally to create.
So if you have your cuttings and you're soaking them and you want to put them 3 or 4 inches down,
in a
do
bucket
you soak that deep?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how deep you're going to plant it is how deep you soak it.
And it's not so much that it's going to imbibe or uptake water through those nodes so much as it's going to be uptake it through the cut portion of it. A really great way to do this with more success is take your cutting and stick it in that bucket of water. The sooner the better. But a little bit I've had some experience in the past where pruning a poplar tree, Lombardy poplar, and I was just taking out some branches and whatever. And I threw them over in the corner of the yard. And
they started rooting?
Well, and here's the thing. Yeah. So after the day was over, I'm like, oh man, I could really use one of those as to help prop up a clematis that I had. So I just went and just kind of shoved it in the ground and kind of leaned it up, and I wrapped the clematis vine tendril kind of up and around that post. It was simply just to be a temporary thing. 8 weeks later, this thing had rooted into the ground, and it became a permanent kind of a trellis post for this clematis. So some varieties are more aggressive than others, and that just happened to be a really good
Well, what
experience.
I've heard, not necessarily a living fence. I know it's kind of off topic. This is almost like more talking about hard cutting propagation. But one thing I've heard that I've never seen it, I've never participated in it, reforesting an area like around swamplands. This is the technique that they'll do, and they'll just jam the cuttings into the ground. I don't even think they soak them. Like, I think they just straight up just stick those puppies in there on the benches of the water line, poplars and cottonwoods, stuff like that.
Just to help kind of reforest
riparian.
it. Yeah.
So is it typically just riparian plants that'll do this, or could you do it with basically just certain ones that propagate
certain
this
ones.
way?
I'm guessing that the riparian varieties, that's a great way to look at it. If you look at it as, okay, what shrubs are growing down around the river areas, the river banks, you'll be very successful. Water birch actually comes to mind. That one I didn't mention before, but that would be a good one to try as well. Beautiful bark.
I wonder if you could do it with some maples, like a paper bark maple.
It's possible.
It's not really super riparian.
It doesn't have really nice long growth leaders, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking of almost like the good cuttings to take would be like water sprouts from a tree, because they're usually very linear, you know. And so that would be. I don't envision one that has like multiple branches shooting off the sides. I mean, you could do that, but
we did do a hard wood cuttings before propagation. We talked about taking them from shrubs and stuff, but we'd have to use the rooting hormone.
You certainly could use the rooting hormone, but it's
not necessary.
Not cheap.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Fairly expensive, and if you use like the powdered style, you know, as long as it was a rooting hormone. Indole butyric acid is one of the names that you'd want to look for in the ingredients.
Yeah.
The main ingredient.
Where would you pick that up? Is it better just to go online these days?
Totally could. But if you're kind of old school and you wanted to go ahead to the store and take a look, I'm sure a lot of the garden centers have it. And quite possibly, the big box stores would have it. I've never seen it, but maybe like in the spring they might buy one case and just like put it on the shelf and like, okay, when that's gone, screw the rest of you.
We'll think about it.
Plant on, Babylon.
All right, well, right on, Brad. We'll see you podlings later.
Catch you later.
Yep, bye-bye. All right, well, there we go. That was episode number 68, Creating a Living Fence. I want to thank Brad for coming to do this podcast with me. I want to thank you, the podlings out there, for listening. Don't forget to check out our webpage, thehorticult.com, for all your horticult needs. We do live stream Wednesdays. We've been doing, as we're taping them, unfiltered. You can watch, you can participate, you can ask us questions when we record new episodes of the podcast, so you could participate then. You don't have to just listen to it. We got an Instagram. Go check out our Instagram, @thehorticult. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. And remember to plant on, Babylon.